Hello everybody, welcome to Builder by Behind the Scene. We've been talking a lot about our ATEM 4K video switch, and I think it's time now we show this a little bit differently and talk about it in a way that I wish somebody would have told me when we started, something to consider. I want to take off the front of it and show you what our switch looks like. Then in the case we've got it mounted, I'm going to spin it around and we're going to take off the back and we're going to take a look at the cables, because there's three styles of cables you need to think about when you're hooking this thing up. And this is an SKB case, shallow rack case. Now in the top we've got a power conditioner, we've got our SSD recorder, we've got two rack spaces with the fans, and then we have two rack spaces in the bottom with the video switch. Now I'm not going to hook this up right now, we're not going to look at the lights and the screen, but I want to show you the cabling on the back and why I think this is matters and it's important. But this is the ATEM 2 ME Production Studio 4K video switch. So I'm going to spin this around. Now what I like to do to make things fast and easy, and what got me started was I was reading one of the user forums, and somebody had talked about how heat was dissipated, and that's always been a concern with the BlackMagic video switch. How do you dissipate heat? We have a fan, it makes noise, but it's not objectionable considering the incredible capabilities it's got. So what I was reading one user had stated, and they were quoting something from BlackMagic that I've never been able to find. BlackMagic expects heat to be dissipated from the unit not only through the fan they have inside, and that's why I have a fan on top with a thermistor on it to read the heat, but I changed that so that it's just a constant fan. Otherwise, if it was going up and down adjusting for the heat, then you notice the fan. Constant volume of fan, less noticeable. But what I read, someone talked about BlackMagic expected to dissipate heat from the video switch through the cables. So that got me to thinking. I'm always concerned about the connections, and when I started, I did research on the kind of cables I was looking for, and I found this Belden, got a pair of them. And I was satisfied with the quality. They're flex, which is what I like, what I need. We do 1080. And this video switch will go to 4K 30. We'll get into that some other time. But the connectors, when you start reaching and trying to mess with these little connectors, then you've got to have a little tool like this. This tool, you put in on the BNC connector to turn them in and out. That is kind of a hassle. These are a great cable, but it's kind of a hassle. Notice they're also black. And for the astute watchers that have been watching some of the videos we do, I'm going to unstrap this and show you three of the cables that we use. One is power, and that is the only cable in here that is black. I've done many years of working with audio, and all we had were black audio cables. And when you got a problem, you got to trace it down from start to finish. Snake, whatever. So I've color-coded all the cables. Now we normally have 8 inputs that we run on cables. Sometimes we run 10 inputs. On the 10 inputs I've got identified, I've used pigtails. And on the pigtails, I've got these additional BNC connectors that allow me to splice the cables together. You can see what one of those looks like. Now I buy these are machined, these are not stamped, so they're a little bit expensive, but when you consider, when I get ready to hook this video switch up, I color code. And you can consider what kind of color coding you like. RGB, red, white, blue, and the pattern can repeat. So the other rack that has the converters in it, it takes up the first 4 cables for converters. The next 4 are for cameras, and then the last 2 are for optional inputs. And I also have the SSD recorder plumbed in so that it stays permanently attached. So if I need to use it as an input, in other words, the SSD recorder can record, it could also be used for playback. And if we choose to use it as a playback device, it's already plumbed in, it's already hooked up. But I wanted to show you these cables we pigtail. Now the cables we use, we get these, and I found these on Amazon, but I was looking for 6G cables. So I can do 4K 30 out of these cables. 1080 is all we do. But we found these on Amazon, and then I went to the manufacturer's website that makes these, and these are Blue Jeans cable, bluejeanscables.com. And you can go and look at their SDI cables, and you can have them custom make. The shortest they'll make, I believe, is 12-inch. That's what these pigtails are. Some of the pigtails I have are longer, like this one for input number 1, because it has to wrap around to another switch that's not sitting in the rack with the video switch with the Film Tools video card. But all the others are this length. Now, I also have the same thing for not only the inputs, but for the outputs. And those I've color-coded as purple for program. Yellow, I use that for the multi-view feed. And I usually feed 2 multi-views. One multi-view for myself and another multi-view for Greg and Lou, who are running the switch so while the presentation's going on. And then I have the orange, which is a separate program out that I use to feed back through the audio and the SDI recorder. Sometime I'll get into that and show you how we plumb it. But I just wanted to share with you, here we have this power unit. This is a power conditioner in the back, and this fits all the way to the back. This is a Furman power conditioner, and it's the deepest thing in there. And we have one wall wart plugged into it, and that wall wart clears with the lid on it. So I've got 2 connectors, and I used short cables. I ordered these. That's one thing about the BlackMagic switch. They don't include cables. And since they don't include cables, you can get what you need, which is a great idea. Otherwise, everybody includes those big long cables, and I like a shorter cable because that's just one less thing to have to deal with. Another thing I do is I put pigtails on the network cable, and I color code those. These pigtails with these blocks, and you can see those are little blocks. And if you'll notice, those blocks are made to insert into a box. And I don't have any problem with signal degradation. So I've got one on the switch, I've got one on the SSD recorder, and the other gear that's in the other rack that has access to the network, I also use pigtails. Now for the network cables, I use flat cables. I'll put a link up to those. I don't have those out to show you right now. But one other one I do want to show you are the HDMI cables we use right now. Now these are thin. These are the thinnest I can get and the longest I can get. They're 8 feet. I cannot color code them, but on the face where it says HDMI on one side and Sanus on the other, I label on both ends on both sides. Cable number 1 on both sides, both ends. Cable number 2, both sides, both ends. So when I pull that out, I know what that is and where it's going to go when it goes to the other device, whatever it plugs into. In this case, our chain, all the inputs feed into the switch. From the switch, we then go through the SSD recorder out to our streaming device, which right now is a consumer product that's hooked up to another computer. That's why we have to have the HDMI, because this SSD recorder allows us to have all those options. This SSD recorder and this switch are well matched. They're both 4K 30. If we had the higher quality switch, we'd want the higher quality SSD recorder, but we would give up the ability to have these HDMI connections. As we move to a professional streaming solution, this becomes less necessary. But while we use a consumer streaming solution, this is extremely necessary. Otherwise, we'd have to use another converter to go back out. And converters is another issue I'll get into sometime, but I wanted to share with you cables, and they're color-coded. Now, in the next video I want to talk to you about is the cameras that we use with our video switch. So we're going to get on that one right now.